Right. So we're still in the middle of FY18 right now. So this is what you can expect. And I'll go over a little bit. I think there might be a timer on this. I'm sorry, 1 second. Let me just get off this timer. Here we go. All right. So, as many of you know, it will come up in just a second. As many of you know, Wake County is growing very fast, and that is a great thing. 67 people per day, or actually Wake County is growing by 67 people per day, which is a ton. It's great that we have this many people. With so many people comes a lot of jobs, but also a lot of traffic and congestion. So part of this Wake Transit Plan is to determine how to give people alternatives to getting in their car and providing them with different ways to get around. So part of the Wake Transit Plan, just to get a bit of background, part of the Wake Transit Plan includes 4 big moves. And I'll go over each of these with you, but these are the main goals of the plan. So the first is to connect the region. The second is to connect all Wake County communities, including all 12 municipalities, create frequent, reliable urban mobility, as well as enhance access to transit. So as you'll see here, this is connecting regionally. We have here our commuter rail that will start in Garner with stops in Raleigh, NC State, Cary, Morrisville, RTP, and then on to Durham. Ultimately, this commuter rail system will connect to Duke, and where it will connect to the light rail system that connects Durham to Chapel Hill.
Where's it starting?
It starts in Garner.
So you are stopping at the airport?
No, ma'am. No. So we're actually starting at RTP, or there will be a stop at Morrisville and RTP. Right now, you can actually get to the airport using our 100 bus, and we will continue to increase service to the airport with bus. A lot of times we do get people who ask about having the airport connected through rail. That maybe could be a possibility in the future, but right now these are the stops due to where the railroad corridor is.
The stop in Marsville will be either Aviation Boulevard or Airport Boulevard. I'm not sure where the station's going to be yet, but wherever it is, there's planned to be very frequent, like 15-minute service, like a shuttle that goes to the airport from there. So you can get off the train and go to the airport very easily.
So you're following a corridor that's already there. That's why you're
exactly,
not there.
Exactly. And that's part of what, a lot of people have asked, well, why isn't this light rail? And a light rail is first of all very expensive, and part of the Wake Transit Plan is to provide people with diverse and robust options for transportation. And I'll go through some of the other ones, but commuter rail is one of those options. And we're actually using already existing rail infrastructure, which is part of a way that we're able to keep some of the costs lower there.
And these are the plans. This isn't in existence yet.
Right. So the actual railroad infrastructure is there, but of course none of the stops or anything like that is there just yet. And this is one of the largest projects that our community will be getting through the Wake Transit Plan.
So that construction is expected to begin when?
So because it is fully funded, but because it's the largest project, we're not expecting it to start until later within the 10 years. But already right now, our planners are in a study right now to determine exactly how this project will be done and exactly where those stops will be.
It's not like project. I'm sorry. It's starting when and ending when?
I'm sorry?
Starting when and ending when?
Starting when for the study?
No, starting when for beginning construction and ending when? What's the target dates?
So we don't exactly have exact dates just yet, but we've been assured that this will be complete by the end of the 10 years.
What's
and the 10 years is
2027.
2027.
Right.
And you can't exactly start a rail system incrementally. In most cases, it just doesn't make sense. So you have to wait until you have the entire corridor ready for it. And back to the question of stations, we'll be using some of the existing stations, including the new Raleigh Union Station, which will open in April or May. We hope. I think it'll be May, but it's certainly going to open before June. We'll be using Cary. We'll be using Durham, the Durham station, And then new stations like in Morrisville and RTP and so on will be developed over the course of the next 10 years.
Why 10 years?
Well, that's what the voters, that was the plan that was presented. It's a very compact 10-year plan. It was thought that would be something that appealed to the majority of people, and it did. So there'll be a plan beyond 10 years. There'll be a 20-year plan and a 30-year plan. But the first 10 years is what people voted on. And this is what we're going to achieve, and that's what Ashley was talking about. What we promised in the first 10 years.
And it's also important to know, I mean, this is a huge project, and I'm only touching on like the largest project. There's more for me to present, but this is a $2.3 billion project overall, and so obviously, like, that's a lot for us to fit into 10 years. So that's why, 10 years is the projected amount of time that people voted on.
Could you, forgive my ignorance, could you explain the difference between commuter rail and light rail?
Yes, so light rail is electric, and it tends to have very short distances between stops. It's also more expensive because you have to build everything because the rails and the infrastructure isn't there already. And commuter rail is heavy rail using the larger actual trains, like trains that if you get on an Amtrak train. It's using those same sorts of trains. Commuter rail also is during it's not necessarily all day. You'll be able to get service in the mornings and the evenings and some in the middle of the day. It's supposed to cater to our commuters who are going back and forth. And I'm sure as many of you know, here in Briar Creek, I mean, there are a lot of people who go back and forth, live in Raleigh, work in Durham. I heard a statistic the other day that there are actually more people from Raleigh who work in Durham than actual people who live in Durham, which is crazy. Of course, 40 is insane with traffic, and so with this commuter rail, we're trying to give people an option that will get them from Raleigh to Durham without being on the roads and give them a comfortable option where they can be productive and not stuck in traffic.
Can I add to that?
Yes, sure.
Sometimes it's hard for people to understand these they're kind of technical terms in the rail industry. Heavy rail refers to what you would consider regular freight railroads. And the reason they use the term heavy is because they meet different crash-worthy standards. When passenger trains run in what's called a mixed freight passenger corridor, they have to be sturdy enough and robust enough to withstand a crash. Light rail is also very crash-worthy, but it doesn't have to share the corridor with freight trains. So it can operate under different standards, which are very safe, but that's why that whole corridor is separate. Ours is not separate. We're going to be in what's called mixed traffic with freight trains, just like Amtrak runs today. We got as many or more Amtrak trains, including the Piedmont services, as we do freight trains in that corridor today. Also, about frequency, we're tentatively, and I've stressed this tentative, the plan is 8-2-8-2. That means 8 round trips in the morning at the AM peak, 2 midday round trips, 8 PM peak round trips in the afternoon for the afternoon commuter rush, and 2 in the evenings. That's a total of 20 round trips or 40 trains a day, which is a pretty considerable number to start in the first 10 years.
And that's not going to conflict with all those other trains, because we certainly have a high percentage, I think, of accidents now. And you're saying you're going to do it on the same tracks. I think that has always been my biggest concern when we go commuter rail, though I still think it's a good option in terms of the financial cost. But I mean, I guess that's probably later on. What are you doing to make sure we don't run into
Oh, that's part of what the study is all about.
Right.
We'll be improving the infrastructure, meaning the tracks, considerably so that doesn't happen. Believe me, it'll be safe and it will be on time.
So
Won't
with
be
this
good if it's
huge
not on time.
investment, you certainly want people to use it.
Right.
So in order to have people to use it, because you have so many infrequent, you got what, 5 stops? What are your plans, so wherever that stop is, to get people 5 miles to their workplace or wherever? So are there going to be shuttles, are there going to be buses, or, because you only have 5
Well,
stops?
actually, maybe it would be easier for me to actually go through the presentation, because I think a lot of these answers you'll gain if I just go through the presentation. But to just answer that question, I'm going to go over a lot of like the different options that people are going to have, and of course, we want people to use this. I mean, we're investing so much of taxpayer money into these options, and we want to make sure that they're utilized. That being said, we're providing people with a lot of options. So we're tripling bus service. So bus service will do exactly what you just said. It will connect to these stops to make sure that once people get there on commuter rail, they're not left high and dry, but they then have an option to get where they need to go. So yeah, so if we could, let's just hold some of the questions until the end, and then I will be happy to answer any and all questions you have. So this is the second big move, which is connecting all communities. And here we've got all 12 of the municipalities here in Wake County. And you can see, I know it's a little bit difficult to see, but with the blue lines, these are communities that will be receiving 30-minute service, and the green lines will be receiving 60-minute service. Of course, this is all tentative, but in some way, shape, or form, every community in Wake County will have some sort of service. Which is, I mean, it's a really important way for us to try to continue to move forward and make sure that our, folks that live out in the more rural areas of the county are included in this plan. Here we have, this is the frequent, reliable urban mobility, and just like how we sort of went over the commuter rail aspect, here I want to talk to you a little bit more about bus rapid transit. And for those of you who don't know what bus rapid transit is, it is a frequent network that has raised platforms that allow buses to have, like, our handicapped community be able to get on the buses quicker. There's often dedicated lanes for buses to help them get stay on time and get through traffic corridors more quickly. And there's also there tends to be like preferential signaling so that the buses can get through quicker. And you may have seen, they're called articulated buses, but they're the longer buses that have the like accordion connector, if that gives you a picture of what this looks like. But that's able to make sure that with this 15-minute service, we're able to get people through these really congested corridors. And like we were talking about earlier with the study, along with the commuter rail study, we are also doing a bus rapid transit study currently, because a lot of infrastructure is going to have to be built with this project. Like I said, with the raised platforms, and there's a lot that has to be done and a lot to decide where this will be. And although this could be subject to some change, right now the main corridors are going to connect from Cary into downtown Raleigh through Western Boulevard, Capitol Boulevard, as well as Wilmington Street and New Bern Avenue. And that's to connect with healthcare, with hospitals, with Rex Hospital, and also just to connect, some of the more, traffic-prone areas.
And while you're changing to the next
Yeah.
slide, just to build on this too, as you look at these networks, remember this is, to your question, this is the first 10 years. And so this will provide a base on which we can get started and we can build on and extend these beyond 10 years.
Thank you.
And then another part of this is just enhanced access to transit overall. So here in the blue, it shows these are areas that will have fixed route service if they don't have service already. And then also important to note is that for our other folks here in the rural areas, they'll have the option of using a community funding area. And that's where, like, let's say you live in, Rollsville. And like, let's say for you, you think that like maybe a circulator bus system would really help your community, and people have said, we really, really, really need this, we think it would really help. Well, if you decide that, and you can, voters decide on that in your community, then you'll be able to get a 50% match from Wake County to help put that into place. So this is to also help empower our smaller communities to do what's best for them.
What's a circular? I'm sorry, a circular.
So like Wake Forest, for instance, has a circulator, and it's like
Just within the community?
Right.
So you mean it's not going outside of Wake Forest?
Right.
Okay.
Think our R line, but a little bit
Right.
more effective.
What was it?
The R line
The R
that's
line.
in downtown Raleigh.
Downtown Raleigh.
Oh.
But it would be a little bit more effective. It would go to the areas that have the greatest demand.
Right, and then because part of the plan is to connect all communities, it means that all the communities will have a line that will be able to get them to, some of the larger areas like in Raleigh or in Cary, and so that will then, allow them to get more places in their community if they're not getting direct service through the plan.
And that partly answers your question about how do you get from nodes to outer areas.
And so overall, we're going to be tripling bus service for the whole of Wake County, which obviously is going to make a big difference in what people will be able to use and what options they'll have for getting around. We're going to be creating those bus rapid transit lines, which will have approximately 20 miles in frequent service. And then also, I didn't mention this, but the commuter rail line is going to be a total of 37 miles that people will be able to get to and from using that line. So why is investing in transit a good thing for your community? There are a lot of reasons. Through this plan, 54% of homes and 80% of jobs in Wake County will be within walking distance of a transit stop, which is very exciting, and will also provide people a lot more options to use a bus, say, rather than using their car. For every $1 invested in public transportation, it generates approximately $4 in economic returns. Along with that, with every $1 billion invested in transit, we will receive approximately 50,000 jobs. And to put that in perspective, like I said earlier, we're investing $2.3 billion in public transportation. So we're looking at a very big boom, and that we'll be able to get in terms of jobs to the area because of giving people more options of how to get around. And then also home values tend to perform 42% better on average when they're located closer to transportation stops with high frequency service.
How do you define walking distance?
It's 3/4 of a mile.
Are any of those jobs that you're saying will be needed, are they all things which we're looking ahead at training people to be able to fulfill those jobs? Because I know right now that's one of the biggest areas in the labor trades, that people have focused so much on college that we just don't have basic laborers and trades.
I'm sorry, I didn't really hear the first part of the question.
You said that there's possibly going to be, all this will create 50,000 new jobs, but I said those skills required for those jobs. Are we looking at how many people in the area we have trained to fulfill them, and are we looking ahead at training needs for the skills that are going to be needed to do that?
Right, I think perhaps maybe, I don't know what types of jobs there'll be necessarily. It's just more from the economic boost that the community will get, because more people will be able to get to different places for jobs. For a lot of people right now, they might not be able to take a job in Durham or take a job in Chapel Hill because they can't get there. So this will provide that infrastructure and will help promote economic development in Wake County, but also in the Triangle. With regard to job training, I honestly can't really answer that. I'm not really sure, but I'm sure as we come along with the plan, then we'll be able to see what's necessary and then how to remedy that.
I just think somebody ought to think about that question.
I'm sure they are.
That deals with that.
I'm sorry?
Is there another department that deals with it?
Well, yes, of course. I mean, like, we're focused on transportation, not necessarily jobs. All I'm trying to show is that the American Association for Public Transportation, through a lot of studies across the United States, has found that those are what people tend to receive from investment in transportation. So it's just a general fact. I'm not really sure about like the specifics of the jobs. I just wanted to focus on what positive things that the community will gain.
We have to let
through
you do
investment
what you
in transit.
do, but the question is there another department that's
Perhaps the
tangentially-
Department of Labor?
Yes.
There we
Yeah.
go.
Certainly our community college,
Yeah.
community college system is usually very good about working with the community and with local government when we understand that certain industries might be interested in coming or understand that there are skills gaps. The community college system does tend to work with other areas to try to fill that. And I think part of the job creation also will be just companies that decide that this would be a good place to locate if they're expanding their business or looking for a place to grow their business, because they'll see that they'll be very interconnected across the community.
Yes,
Exactly.
and
That connectivity is very important.
And I'm sure
Mobility.
I'm so sorry, Will.
No, go ahead.
I'm sure a lot of you have heard about Amazon. It's very exciting that Amazon has put, the triangle on, maybe not for some of you, but I think, it's very exciting that, our community was considered one of the top 20 places for Amazon to locate to. And that is a good example of job creation And one of the issues with our area for Amazon was just a lack of public transportation. For a lot of companies, it's very important that public transportation exists because it helps people get around and it helps, efficient, business dealings in general. So,
what are the projections to create the system? How many jobs will you need to make this happen?
oh, that's actually a really great question. I know that we'll be investing a lot, and if I could just get through the presentation, we will be investing a lot in administrative. I don't actually have a number in terms of like job creation from administration, but
isn't a lot of this infrastructure development is construction now?
Right, exactly, yes. And like I do have a pie chart that kind of outlines sort of where the revenue will be used, so we can go over that in a few minutes.
But the numbers given here are permanent jobs.
Yes, I understand.
Right. So, so this is just sort of to outline some of the investment that's already been put into service now from last year. So I just wanted to kind of highlight, even though this is a 10-year plan, there are improvements happening now. And so just to go through that, so very exciting that there is now increased Sunday service on all routes to match Saturday levels. I don't know how many folks I have in here who are in fact transit users, but you know, it was a really big deal to have our community to be able to get around on a Sunday because that wasn't actually an option until this last improvement. So that's very exciting. Also 15-minute service for South Saunders, and a big thing that we've heard from a lot of people is that, and I don't know how many of you have seen, but there's a lot of issues with our bus stops. Some bus stops don't have a shelter. There is no bench. And to see, a mom or a dad or, just anybody just trying to get from A to B having to stand outside in the rain is a real issue. So we've heard the community, and all of the transit agencies are investing a lot in improving their bus stops to give people shelter, at least a place to sit. And that will continue along with this plan. Then for Cary, increase all 4 downtown routes, adding Sunday service, and then of course with the bus stops and bus signs. And then for Go Triangle, which is who Will and I work for, or Will is a board member for, is increased frequency from every hour to every 30 minutes on that Route 100 that I just mentioned earlier, that goes from downtown Raleigh to the airport and then on to the Regional Transit Center in Durham. So so those are just a few of the improvements that have happened already. And so in the fall, and I'll touch on a little bit of this later for what you guys can help me with maybe in the spring, but in the fall, we actually went to the community and asked everyone that we spoke with to just like help us prioritize what comes next in the plan and what's the most important to them. So not necessarily if something will happen, but when. And so just sort of the key themes that we received from some of those public meetings were that people wanted increased frequency and longer service spans, as well as increased service on Sunday, which, as you can see with what I just presented, was that we were in fact able to do that by increasing frequency as well as providing Sunday service. Also with constructing better passenger facilities as well as bus stops, we've heard that as well, and so that's something that we're investing in, all 3 of the agencies, of course. And then also expanding service to underserved locations and implementing new transit routes. To me, this last one is the most exciting because even though the vast majority of people in Wake County do not use transit, they actually said that the most important thing to them is providing more service to underserved areas, which I think really is a testament to what the purpose of this plan is, which is to provide more service for everyone. And so now, I would like to go over with you some of the proposed investments for this next fiscal year, and that's for July 1st, as Will mentioned, to June 31st, 2019. So here's that pie chart I was talking about, and this is for the second year, so we are now in the second year of the 10-year plan, and this kind of goes over the revenues that we'll be getting as well as the expenditures here. So with regard to the half-cent sales tax, which is the biggest revenue source for the plan, we'll have $86.7 million, and then you can see some of the other sources here. And then with regard to expenditures, we'll be using 48% on bus operations, purchases, and infrastructure. And then, and I'll have some of those more specific numbers a little bit later. And then also 41% will be going towards an allocation for reserves. And that is to go towards these studies that we are doing right now for those really big projects like bus rapid transit and commuter rail.
In addition to the studies, it's kind of like putting money in a savings account to buy a house, because the BRT, bus rapid transit, and CRT, commuter rail, they're both very expensive, so you have to save up for it and put your money away. That's what we're doing here.
And so another very exciting proposed change is the Fare Free for Youth proposal. And I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but this is for students, or not just for students, but youth from ages from 18 and under will be able to ride for free on our buses. And the hope here is that, like you asked earlier, making sure that people are actually using this. We want to provide our young people with an option to get, maybe to a summer job, or get to the pool, or whatever it is that they get to the art museum, whatever it is that they would like, to be able to use public transportation and to not use mom as a taxi to get from one place to the other. And also a second really great thing that will come out of having youth on the buses will be that we're actually growing our ridership from a young age. So these kids, when they get to their 20s and their 30s, they will be our riders. They will be part of, in 10 years from now, when we have a commuter rail, they'll say, I've been riding the bus, I've been getting around, this is no big deal. I don't mind making this a part of my lifestyle.
And that's just for the buses, not for the commuter rail?
This is just for buses right now. I'm sure that we can reevaluate that when we have the commuter rail, but...
The pass will work for all modes, including bus rapid transit.
Okay.
Okay.
We just don't have a commuter rail.
Right, we just
I understand.
Right.
Well, when we do, they'll be able to ride it.
Okay. That's actually, I've never been asked that, so I'm glad to know that.
And has it started already? The free fare?
So this is for the proposed FY19 plan. So if this is adopted, but if it is adopted, then starting July 1st, then that will be an option for our young folks.
And just to mention, the Raleigh City Council has decided that for some reason this doesn't get approved, we're going to allow 18 and under to ride free on Raleigh City buses anyway. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Kate Crowder deserves some credit for championing.
That's great.
By the way, if you're a little up in age like I am, you can ride for free now.
Yeah, 65 and older you can ride.
What was that, 65 and older?
65 and older you can ride Raleigh City buses for free now. You just go down to the municipal building, get your picture taken, they'll give you a bus pass.
Will's got his.
Somewhere.
So it is. There's a couple of people 65 and over here. I'm one.
Yeah, well, so I
Here we go.
It's important.
Yeah, Will's got his.
Will that be incorporated into this expanded service too?
So that actually already exists. So the free for seniors.
So if you're 65 and older, go get your free bus pass.
Yes, but not on the trains.
Yes, ma'am. It'll work eventually on the train.
Eventually.
When we have trains.
Right.
What we want to do is, right now we have to talk about trains and bus rapid transit and buses, but eventually we want you and everyone to think, we have a transit system. Do I really care what mode I get on? Do I care whether it's a train or a bus rapid transit bus or a regular bus? No. I know I need to get from here to here, and I'll think through what modes I have to get on, and I won't give a second thought to whether it's a train or a bus.
Okay, that's true.
Yes, and so far, I've been the keeper of our comments, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but so far we have gotten overwhelming support from the community on this, which I think is really exciting. And, a lot of times people feel compelled to write when they disagree with something. Sometimes it's hard to get, actual support when people like something. A lot of times it ends up being a silent majority. But I'm very excited to see that a lot of people felt compelled to tell us how excited they are about this. So. And then I know that this is a lot, but this is some of the other proposed bus service expansion, and just to highlight some of the big ones. So Southeast Raleigh will be getting increased service And I've got some of the specific new routes here, which is very exciting. Also, we will have expanded route to along the Blue Ridge corridor, so that will serve the North Carolina Museum of Art as well as Rex Hospital. And then creating a new route along the corridor for Western Parkway as well as Park West Village in Morrisville. And Wake Tracks, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with Wake Tracks, but it's an on-demand service for the elderly, for handicap. It's a way for them to call in and get service if they can't, in fact, use a bus for some reason. They're expanding service. One of the issues was just that they were overwhelmed with demand, and so we are investing more to make sure that they are able to keep up with that demand and add more rides. And then also for Go Triangle, increasing frequency for the DRX as well as the CRX, which are our express routes that go to Durham and to Chapel Hill, as well as adding service hours to that Route 100, which serves the RDU airport, and also adding operating hours to 919-485 ride. So if any of you have any questions about getting from A to B, or you're just interested, hey, I'm at my house, I have no idea where the closest bus stop is, or how to get to a place, you are more than welcome to give that number a call, and we'll have customer service folks that are there to help you out.
And they can talk about how to connect between Go Triangle and Go Raleigh.
Right.
Or Go Durham.
Right, because this is this kind of special nuance for our community, because we have 3 different agencies, and for a lot of our riders, they just know I've got to get from here to here. I don't care. I don't know necessarily like what agency I'm using, but we have a lot of collaboration between those agencies, which include Go Raleigh, Go Cary, and Go Triangle. And just also as background, so Go Triangle serves the region, so we actually cross county lines, and Go Cary serves the town of Cary, and of course Go Raleigh serves the city of Raleigh. Just as some background, a lot of people ask me about that.
And there's a Go Durham too, right?
And then there's a Go Durham as well, and Chapel Hill Transit.
And just as I said a few minutes ago about eventually it won't matter what mode you get on, we want to work towards a network, a regional network, where you won't care whether you're on Go Durham or Go Raleigh or Go Triangle. You're going from
right.
here to there.
Exactly. Yes, and it also is important to note too that even though we are all separate transit agencies, that all of us are working together for this plan and coordinating to make sure that we're serving each is serving their community in the best way possible.
These are all going to be natural gas buses too when they're added, aren't they?
Yes, so we're looking into CNG buses. Right now, as far as electric, we've gotten a lot of the community has said that they would like us to invest in electric buses. And while we did apply for a federal grant last year to get electric buses, it didn't end up working out. But the great news is that we applied for it as a region. Which was, a step definitely in the right direction in terms of the sort of regionalism that we're trying to use for the triangle at large. But as soon as we can invest more in those more clean energy buses, we will be doing that.
And just a footnote to that, we are getting a lot of compressed natural gas buses in Raleigh. Those buses cost about the same as a diesel bus, which is about $500,000. Right now, an electric bus costs over $1 million. And they have a much smaller range because you have to
right, and also you have to, right, and you also have to build the electric infrastructure to support those buses. Maybe 20 years from now, that will be something that we can look into investing in. But right now, it's been looked at, and it's not necessarily the best use of our taxpayer dollars to make sure they get the most bang for their buck.
But as technology improves and as the price differential comes down, we continue to look at that almost every month, not every year.
Yeah, seriously, because we get a lot of that people, that's what they care about, and they want us to have that, but we also have to look at the pros and cons of trying to provide clean energy, which is what we want, also what the community wants, but also making sure that we're providing the most for our taxpayers. And then these are just some additional transit investments proposed, but that is to buy those additional replacement buses. Also, once again, improving bus stops, adding more park and rides, and building the regional operations and maintenance facility in Cary, and just generally enhancing customer experience. So I know that you saw that pie chart earlier, and this kind of breaks down that pie chart into more digestible numbers. So nearly 47 million, that was that 41%, will be dedicated to go towards future transit projects, as Will mentioned earlier. It's kind of like getting a mortgage on a house. So we're trying to put money away now to make sure that we're able to support these projects later. And so that will include the bus rapid transit and commuter rail, which we discussed earlier. So this brings me to my call to action, which is right now we are in the middle of a public comment period on behalf of this work plan. I know that this is kind of a quick presentation, but if you would like to read the work plan in its entirety, it is at waketransit.com, and you are more than welcome to send in your comments to info@waketransit.com, and I will be the keeper of those comments. So we started this comment period on January 23rd, and this comment period will end on the 12th. So you're still more than welcome to send in your comments. In April, the TPAC, which is the Transportation Planning Advisory Committee, will be incorporating all the feedback. So making sure that we are crossing our T's and dotting our I's. If there's any huge changes that need to be made, they will make them then. Then it'll be sent in May and June to Campo and to Go Triangle for their boards to approve that. And then in July, the plan will be adopted.
Campo is the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, CAMPO.
And so this is more of that information here. And then just as an aside, I do want to mention that come April, we will be doing a second public outreach period. And in the fall, we learned a lot. We were very heavy on the public meetings, which of course are great, but sometimes it's hard to get folks in the door. So this go around, we're going to be doing a lot of different options. Of course, we'll still be having the more formal public meetings, but we're also going to be doing pop-up events as well as community meetings to make sure we're going where people are. Because of course, we just want to make sure we're getting as much information from the community as possible to make sure that everybody supports the plan. So I would be glad, we're still in the process of working out exactly when, but as soon as I have the times for that, I would love to come back, if you'll have me, Stef, to discuss the specifics of that. Because our goal is to make sure that we've got almost 1 million people here in Wake County, so it's a very tall order to ask that we reach every person, but you know, I'm very much trying. So yeah, so that's my presentation. I know everybody had a lot of questions. Thank you. So are there any other questions? Seriously? There aren't any? Yes, ma'am.
Does the bus service plan to extend to the Briar Creek area? I don't think I've ever seen a bus in Briar Creek.
Yeah, this I've seen.
Well, there's one bus stop on T.W. Alexander, but I don't know if it stops also up in the shopping center.
Yeah,
There's one over by Bexley,
by who?
over by the development. I've seen people get on a bus.
Because Walmart, so I had to walk from here down to Walmart.
Yes, I actually,
Yeah,
we should have. And so actually what I can provide, so if I'm completely honest, I'm not totally sure. I know that there are stops around here, but if you all would be interested in getting more information about that, I'd be happy to get that and then push that out. Would I just email that to you?
Yeah, in fact, if you could email me your presentation,
Okay.
I'll send it out.
Okay.
Meeting.
Awesome.
Yeah, that one.
Okay, well, if nobody has any other questions.
Are you continuing your partnership with Translocate?
Yes, we are.
Is
So
it
we work with them,
okay.
and also I've got. I'm working on another presentation right now. So, and actually, it would have been useful maybe to do this presentation before having done this one. But that's just to talk about how to ride the bus, how to get on the bus. For a lot of people, it's maybe if you're from here. I'm from Raleigh, but I've lived in some other places, and so I've used public transportation. A lot of people, like my mom and dad, have never stepped on a bus in their life. So the idea of getting on a bus is terrifying. So we are trying to bridge that gap and try to make it a little bit more accessible and a little bit less terrifying. So, because it is easy to get on a bus, but we just want to make sure that we're furthering that sort of like education piece. And so I'll be sure to, we've got like a Transit 101, you know, pamphlet, which I wish I had brought with me, but I'll just share everything with you, Steph, if you want to push that out.
Yeah.
So if anybody has any questions, I'm going to leave my card up here, and please feel free to email me. And if you know anybody who would like a presentation, who would like to learn more about public transportation, I'm your gal. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley and Annabelle, for all of that. Clearly, there's a lot of interest in this subject, and so we'll look forward to having you back when there are updates. If you are interested in providing input to the survey that she mentioned, if you're on my email list, if you're not, you can sign up to get on it. I just sent out my weekly update yesterday, and on that there was a link to the survey. So the deadline is March 12th, so if you want to do that, that would be one place to start. I just want to cover a few updates from recent city council events, and Ashley will email me the slides, so we'll send those out. At our last meeting, there were a lot of questions about CACs, and we didn't have a map. If you're interested in the different CACs in Raleigh and what areas they cover, there's a map there you can take a look at after we finish up here. There's also a map of District E, which is the district that we're in the pink there. And over there, probably you can't see it behind this agenda thing, is my contact information, my phone number, how you can reach me on email, and my Facebook page and my Twitter page. So if you ever need to get in touch with me, you have lots of options. So city council update. City council members went on a retreat last week before last. We went up to Asheville for basically from Wednesday afternoon through Friday afternoon. We had an opportunity to meet with the mayor of Asheville and some other members of the Asheville city government and other members of the council, and we learned a lot about what they are doing in terms of some of the same issues that we're facing in Raleigh: affordable housing, short-term rentals, accessory dwelling units. And we're going to try to take some of those learnings and incorporate them back into moving forward on some of those same issues here in Raleigh. And I know a lot of people have been frustrated that things seem to be moving slowly in some of these areas. And one of the reasons, frankly, has been because, you know, if we get to a very small set of principles, everybody can agree on those. But once we move outside of that small set, we seem to run into people on opposite sides of the arguments. And so nothing's been happening because we're waiting for the perfect solution. And what we talked about at our retreat was maybe we don't need to wait for the perfect all-encompassing solution. Maybe we could start with a few things that we all agree on, implement that, and then work towards building agreement on some of the other issues. And so I'm hoping that we're going to be able to move that forward as a result of the retreat and make some progress in some of those areas. Because those are things that are important to our constituents and important for us to solve as a city as we grow. Things like affordable housing, short-term rentals, growth and development in general. One of the other things we talked about a little bit, not so much at the retreat, but at several of our last city council meetings, is the issue of gun violence. You know, the shootings in Florida a couple of weeks ago now, I think really hit home for a lot of people, and the continuing violence is an issue. And so I'm setting up a meeting with our police chief to try to talk about what we can do as a community to address the issue of gun violence and gun safety. Obviously, we're not in the General Assembly. We can't pass any laws about it as a city, but maybe there are things we can do to help educate people about gun safety issues and how to be safer in those areas. And it's something that affects not only our citizens, but obviously our police officers. And if we can do something to reduce that toll, I think that would be a very significant accomplishment. Another thing that came up, we have a lot of boards and commissions that we rely on volunteers to help us keep things moving in the city, from our Appearance Commission to our Human Relations Commission to Parks and Recreation Advisory Board there are lots of opportunities to serve. If you're interested in contributing as a volunteer and serving on some of these boards and commissions, let me know, or let somebody know. If you want to take a look, go to raleignc.gov and type in boards and commissions in the search engine. You can get an idea of the kinds of things that are available if you're interested in getting more involved in the community. To help keep you all more informed about what's going on, we've recently started posting a weekly update from the city manager on raleignc.gov, and that had been a publication that had been shared with city council members but not with the rest of the community. And one of the first things I did when I got on council was to ask if that could be shared with the larger community, and so it is now being posted on a weekly basis, and it's a good way to learn more about what's going on in the city.
Which day of the week is it posted?
It's usually posted on Mondays.
Thank you.
And I'll just go through a couple of highlights from our last few meetings. At our February 6th meeting, we approved a historic overlay district for Overland Village in Raleigh, which I think will go a long way towards helping preserve that community. We also approved a neighborhood conservation overlay district for the North Hills area, where the neighbors were concerned about lots of tear downs replacing middle income type housing with McMansions, and so this will help them be able to preserve the existing neighborhood. We had a work session on February 12th because we are looking for a new city attorney. Our city attorney, Tom McCormick, retired after something like 40 years of service. We have a wonderful interim city attorney, but we are launching a big search for that position, and that's a very key position in the city. We had a work session on February 13th where we went over some North Carolina Department of Transportation project plans. We also got an overview about plans for potentially updating our civic campus downtown. I think lots of folks have a lot of questions about that. There's information online. If you go to raleignc.gov, you can look up information. If you can't find what you're looking for, get in touch with me and I'll point you in the right direction. We had meetings on the 20th where we talked about several issues. The pilot textile recycling program, if you all have had an opportunity to take advantage of that, it's now with your regular bi-weekly recycling that you get a little orange bag and you can put out textiles to be recycled. We also...
What kind of textiles?
Used clothing, shoes, sheets, blankets, towels. We are encouraging people to donate usable items still to nonprofits and charities that can use them. But if you've got stuff that you wouldn't want to donate because it's in such bad shape.
What about clean rags?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, anything like that.
I don't
Clean
want to do
rags.
that.
Yeah. So
But they can throw them out because they can be recycled with something.
Right, and that does not cost the city anything, so your tax dollars aren't involved with that at all. One thing that I'm also very excited about that was another thing that I advocated for when I got on council to encourage citizen engagement. Starting this Tuesday, March 6th, we have a 6-month pilot program where if you come to a city council meeting or city council work session or committee meeting and you park in the city parking deck next to the municipal building, you can get your ticket stamped and you will not have to pay to park. So we are hoping that will make it a lot easier to participate, because I know I used to go to a lot of those meetings and I was racking up, a few dollars here, a few dollars there, but it adds up. And if you really want to get involved and be a participant and an observer, it makes it nice. Of course, if you take the bus, you don't have to worry about parking, but if you don't take the bus and you drive, it's an option. It is only in the deck next to the municipal building, though. It's not on-street parking. You still pull a ticket when you come in, and then after the meeting, you just get somebody to stamp it, and when you go out, you just hand it to the ticket taker, and it won't cost you anything.
Now, who will stamp it? It's someone at the meeting or at the front desk? Or?
Somebody will be at the meeting to stamp it. That's my understanding. We also, on February 26th, we talked about garbage pickup and recycling and leaf collection, and because we're beginning to work on our budget for the next year. And I know a lot of people were very concerned, me included, that the leaf collection this year was particularly not very good, and we ended up with piles of leaves out on the street, blocking traffic, causing safety issues for walkers and bike riders and cars. Plus it was an environmental hazard. And so we're looking at what it would cost to upgrade the service so that we can pick up the leaves more frequently and not have those piles out in the street. Or does it make more sense to just ask people to bag their own leaves and stop the pickup entirely? And I'm not sure where we're going to end up on that, but I think everybody agrees that the status quo is not working. We also looked at what's called a pay-as-you-throw garbage pickup program, where the potential was to give people smaller carts to put their garbage in, and if you took a smaller cart you wouldn't be charged as much. And the whole purpose of that is to encourage more recycling. But then, kind of in looking at all the numbers, it turns out that Raleigh does a very good job of recycling already. Some areas of the city do better, some areas do worse, but we're doing a really good job as it is. So we may not implement a new system at this point, but that was one of the things we looked at. But I just want to encourage people to fill up your blue recycling bucket as much as you can. Try to keep the trash out of the green one. Some of our committee meetings, we've been talking about how you define an attic and a basement in a building, which you would be surprised how complicated that can be, but trying to make it so that builders and developers can't get around limits on height by not counting basements and not counting attics. And how do you define a basement and an attic? It gets kind of squirrely, but it can be interesting too. And so this Tuesday, March 6th, we have a city council meeting coming up. We have a lot of rezoning hearings, and again, if you're on my email list, you would have gotten something that lists what's going on, and you would have gotten links to the survey that Ashley mentioned. Also, there is a city resident budget survey. So again, we're planning the budget for next fiscal year, and we want your input. So if you go to RaleighNC.gov and type in budget survey, or if you click on the link in the email I sent you, you can go to the survey. It's a pretty short, quick, and easy survey, and you just get an opportunity to say what your priorities are. I think those are the main highlights. We'll open it up for questions in just a minute, but before I do want to thank Briar Creek Community Center for hosting us. Great facility, and I'm really appreciative that you all came out today. I want to thank Travis Bailey for recording the session here and making it available later. And I'd like to thank Ashley and Will for coming out to talk about Go Triangle. And I'd like to thank all of you for showing up on a Saturday morning to learn about these things and get involved in your community. So with that, does anybody have any concerns, questions, issues you'd like to raise?
I want to thank you for the donuts and the bananas.
You are quite welcome. Help yourself.
I just have one quick one. In the discussion on affordable housing, how does it go within the city council about the cooperation for new developments and the set-asides for affordable units? And I know it's not required, it's requested. And where is that in the discussion about all of this?
Well, legally we cannot require set-asides of affordable housing, at least that's my understanding. But we're talking to developers more these days about voluntary and incentivizing, and we looked at lots of different ways, and in fact talking to the folks in Asheville, ways where we can give them more density, give them more height, give them more of what they might want if they will agree to either build some, while they're building whatever they're building, to build some affordable units or include affordable units with that. In Asheville, what they do also is if they don't want to include affordable units in whatever they're building, they have the option of paying into a fund that is then used to fund affordable housing in other locations. So that's definitely something we're looking at. Wake County did recently released an affordable housing plan, and we had representatives from the city of Raleigh on the task force that worked on that. So we will be looking to work closely with the county to see what we can do. And actually, Cynthia Ball and I went to meet with folks from CASA recently, and they do affordable housing and workforce housing apartments. It's a small nonprofit that's been around for 26 years, and I think they built 491 units, if I recall correctly. And we're going to Cynthia and I are planning to follow up and meet with some local developers and see if we can get them interested, because it's a great model. They do a lot of housing for formerly homeless people, housing for veterans, housing for elderly and disabled. And we got to tour one of the apartments, and they really seem like a great organization. I think people hear a lot about Habitat for Humanity, and they do a great job too, but I don't think people are as aware of CASA, and we were very impressed with them. So definitely something worth looking into. So it's clearly on the radar of a lot of people. It's not an easy problem to solve, but if we don't do anything, it's only going to get worse. So, and Raleigh did enact a 1 penny tax that is generating almost $6 million a year towards affordable housing. And we are looking to buy property, and in fact, I think we actually have bought some property where we intend to have affordable housing built. Robert?
What's the official definition of affordable?
It varies. You know, a lot of times, when people say affordable housing, they can mean everything from workforce housing, which basically means for teachers, firefighters, and people who are working but don't necessarily earn enough money to be able to afford a house in this community, especially. Some of it has to do with if you spend more than 30% of your income on housing, whether that's affordable or not. There are different levels, and we do need to decide as a community where we want to focus our efforts. We can certainly play all across the spectrum, but there are a number of different areas. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Cynthia?
Well, I know there's been so much conversation about this for many years, and the places that you tend to think of being able to afford to buy land are out in eastern Raleigh, especially. That seems to be a focus, as opposed to neighborhoods that maybe are not sure they want affordable housing in their neighborhoods. One of the best things I thought Casa said was the woman who's sort of it was her idea, and she still has these sort of watchwords that she uses, and one is, the only thing I want to see that people say about these apartments and so forth is that the others are upset. Well, I'm paraphrasing. Others are upset because theirs don't look as good. Meaning they have a very high standard. They take care of them and so forth. So I think that this is a challenge for us to find places that maybe are in neighborhoods that would welcome them, provided they were assured that they were going to be maintained well, and so forth. Find places that we can collaborate with other groups, like some developers and some other nonprofits, perhaps. I was very impressed, as were you.
Yes, we both
I think
were.
what has always really concerned me is that somehow we associate affordable housing with cheap looking
Exactly.
and that's not necessarily the truth. And I know there was I think within the last 6 months there was some article about that there's a part of the UNC curriculum, or maybe it was North Carolina State, where they have people that this is their career path, is helping to design things. And it said that this could be something, I mean, if you're looking for something to be designed so that it fits with the community and it looks nice, you can go to people who can actually do this for you for nothing, who are in school. And that's what I said. I think that's people's biggest concern is if you say affordable, they think it's not going to look good. And that's not true. All people want is something that they can buy. And I think so many people think that they only think rentals. And this city, and I'll just say this one thing is, if you were to look at how many people in this city and county rent, you're destroying the future of this county overall. Because every person who can't buy, he's not a taxpayer, number one, and you lose the incentive of, I mean, I think it just helps your self-esteem to be an owner. I mean, I've always owned, and I've always been fortunate that I could. But with the people that are young people today who are coming up, and from the time they get their first job, they even have to share an apartment in order to be able to afford one. And so,
Live at home.
and live at home. And I think that
Both of those
I
times
think
are
that the more we can turn some of those apartments into at least condos or something. And I don't know what's being done about that, but I think that the high number of rentals is really it's a sad state of things in this wonderful, wonderful county.
Yeah, I agree.
don't know what's being done to address that.
I'm in real estate, and what I see is people call and say they're looking for an apartment. You know, I see that no Section 8, no Section 8. People don't want to rent, you know, to Section 8 people anymore. And that is a big problem. And I'm down here 5 years from New Jersey, New York area. And what they do there, they build luxury buildings and there's a set aside.
Right.
So, you know, you don't even know who's there. She's paying $3,000 and I'm paying $1,000. But I did hear that the apartments are slightly different. Okay? But you can't tell from the outside what is actually going on. And I think of affordable housing, right away, I think that there's a racial issue and I think that there's a class issue without a doubt.
Absolutely.
They're coming at us and they're going to ruin our community. As a homeowner, and I've also had the grace and blessing of being able to own numerous homes in my adult life. It's one of the things people think about. Well, if they build that, and will it bring down my property values? Most of us in America didn't start rich.
Right.
Most of us have had to work black, white, blue, green, and calico. Have had to work ourselves up from the bottom. And I heard a young lady say recently, we haven't always been so sedate. So we have to keep that in mind about who we don't want and why we don't want. Like my husband's from Texas. And here we talk about the Mexicans and this and that. He says, when the Mexicans move into the community, they beautify it. They're very certain about that. But over here, it's like, oh, you know, it's just amazing how we have evolved as Americans in a country of immigrants. Totally, it's just, and the fact that good people remain quiet.
Yes.
You know, that good people, because I still believe there are a lot of very good people in America. But you have to stand up and say something.
Yes.
Right? We're watching the country. You can't even put your baby in front of the television if the president's going to be speaking. As a classroom teacher, I would have been devastated. I wouldn't be able to say, the president's speaking tonight. We always look forward to the presidential address. We can't now. I don't know if he's going to cuss, go crazy, go mad, and we all act like this is not the new normal for Americans. It's not for this American. So we have to watch those affordable housing things.
No, you're right.
You know they're coming. You know, we're here, we've been here, we built it, and I'm back down here.
Yeah.
Where the blood, sweat, and tears are in this earth here in the southern states of America.
And one of the things, too, that we're looking to do is to promote more density along the bus rapid transit corridors for affordable housing and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
I would like to speak up for the seniors. There's a lot of us that's living longer than young people, and I live in 55 and older, but this is the only one in Bryan Creek, and we need more senior homes, apartments in this area.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a recognized need, and I know there are some developers who are interested in building more senior housing and incorporating it in existing communities, so it's not like stuck out on the edges somewhere. And we just,
And add on to that needs to be more affordable. Because I went over to look at that one affordable home for a relative who was interested, and I thought, my God, these are the prices. You know, it won't be affordable for you to live there, but yes, it's nice. But you really have to have retired with a fairly good income to get in there.
Yeah.
So as well as young affordable, there needs to be senior affordable housing.
And the rents go up every year in the senior housing. When they continue to have a fixed income.
Exactly.
Right.
So that needs to be on the city council's let's talk about this.
Yes.
I just wish we would make it
more able for young people to buy their first job. They could be making, some of them start out at $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, and yet they still find it hard to save and buy a home if they've got to pay $1,500 or less.
One more question.
Speaking of senior citizens, I just wanted to say, I want to check the math. When I recently became eligible to get the free bus pass, I went down and got it. They will ask to see an ID of some sort to prove it, and they take your picture and give it to you. They did say it can be a little dicey if you come down there at lunchtime. There's not always somebody, well, you know, somebody not in the office to take your picture. But let me tell you, it's wonderful. When you go downtown, you don't, not only do you not have to worry about paying for parking, you don't have to look for a parking space. The City Hall.
City Hall.
So it's a good deal.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I have one.
Charles.
I have one. First, I want to say thank you for doing this. We really appreciate you having this meeting. But I have one question regarding, I thought I went to a meeting not too long ago, and they talked about some sort of construction on 540. Do you know about that? Some construction on 540, expansion or something on 540?
Do you mean like the future
Expansion?
540? The future connection?
Yeah, yeah.
You mean
No,
on
by Brian Creek.
540 here?
Yeah.
I don't know a thing about it. Even, I'm a voting member to Campo from our board, and so I have to know a lot about highways, even though I don't particularly want to. But I haven't heard anything about that.
Expanding the garden.
Yeah. No, I thought it was something. I thought it was a project right here.
Overpass on 70. I think it's the 70 improvements, and then there's an overpass coming off of Durham. Is that what you're talking
It's for
about?
that interchange is for 147 to
Right,
70.
yes.
No, I'm talking about right down here, Brian Creek, and Glenwood.
Glenwood,
Yep.
that's what I.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, right. So it's not really 540, it's Fire Creek and Glenwood.
Yeah.
That'd be T.W. Alexander.
Right.
Yeah. I know that's due to be redone, but because I'm a transit nerd, I haven't kept up with that as closely. So
I just wanted to know. I heard
like
about that like last year, and I hadn't heard anything since. I just want to know where that project was.
Probably you could go to the NCDOT website, and I think they have a lot of material on there because they're obviously planning a lot of improvements to 440 and around that area. So I think
and call somebody at NCDOT too, because they can tell you. Just make a blind call there if you can't find it on the website, and they will direct you to the right person when you give them that specific question.
I just want to know, as a community, how we're going to be impacted once, that project starts.
Well, usually they do. I think they've done a pretty good job of community meetings, to involve folks when something like that is planned nearby. I don't know, Cynthia, would you have any insights into that now?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't either, but usually they are very good about publicizing opportunities for public comment, and they come out with all sorts of diagrams and posters and explain everything and have people there to answer questions.
I think as more and more of these things become more and more controversial, they're going to do more and more of those public comment sessions.
Exactly.
It's good.
Yeah, it is good. It is good.
Steph,
Yeah.
One of the questions I was kind of expecting to hear was, what is the nexus between affordable housing and transit? And of course, affordable housing residences are not really part of the mission statement of any transit, but we want to cooperate with the agencies that do have to be responsible for it. And one place that we would like affordable housing to be available, if we could, is around transit stops, where it's easy for people to walk to a transit stop. Now, here's how that might work. I'm only saying might. It's up to the city council. They're putting away $6 million a year or so right now.
Yes.
As Steph said, what would you use that money for? One possibility might be to land a bank, where you buy land and reserve it in an area where the prices are going up for affordable housing in the future. But where do you buy that land? if you decide it would be optimal to buy it along a transit route, and you've got to wait for these BRT routes and the frequent bus routes to be absolutely tied down and the stations identified, we call them stations, the stops, because it's around those stops where it would be ideal to have affordable housing. And once you know, and that hasn't been done yet, it won't be done until, for bus rapid transit, until mid-year this year. We'll have some idea, we'll have a draft idea, but even then it's not, they won't tie down the stations absolutely until maybe the end of this year or early next year. When that happens, then the Raleigh City Council could, for instance, say, oh, now we know where the stations are going to be. Let's look at opportunities, what land is around each one of those, to perhaps buy. Because that would be, as I said, ideal.
Yeah.
Did I state that?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And the city actually, I think, at our meeting on Tuesday, we've got an agenda item. We're selling some surplus property that we own near downtown, and we're going to take the proceeds and put that in our fund for affordable housing. So as Ashley and Will were talking about, a lot of, with the transit, same thing with housing. It's not like you just snap your fingers and you start building something. Sometimes you have to accumulate enough money to buy the land and, you know, get started on the building. So unfortunately, it's not happening as quickly as we would like, but we are trying to, you know, amass the funds so that we can do some things that will have an impact.
Have you ever thought of, with that money that you're taking in for housing, also working with Habitat for Humanity, which has the resources? Because why not use that same concept where people put sweat equity into, you know, building their own home? I mean, because that sometimes is there. They have to wait for people to donate the money to get ready to build. And if you're creating pools of money and you have a way to secure the land, why not work with Habitat?
And we may very well be doing that, I don't know, but I do know that we do work with CASA, and they mentioned an apartment building that they were able to buy because it came on the market. They didn't have the money, they came to Raleigh, we gave them some money, and they were able to buy an older apartment building, fix it up, and rent it to folks, you know, at more reasonable rates, rather than having it either torn down and replaced.
Torn down and you know what would have gone there.
Yes, luxury high-rise, yeah.
Terry, what's to keep the taxes from going up? Say we build affordable housing now, and as the taxes keep going, what's to keep the taxes down?
Yeah, that's a big problem, because a lot of older people, especially who own their own homes and then find the, you know, property values rising around them and find it difficult. The gentrification is a huge issue, and I've asked, and I haven't gotten an answer, you know, are there things we can do to, you know, freeze tax rates for seniors or for certain income levels or something like that? And I know there's probably a lot of legalities associated with that, but that's certainly an item that has been brought up. And I think a lot of folks are concerned about what's going to happen to land values around Dix Park as we begin to develop there, and concern about you know, pushing out people who have lived in that community a long time. And so that is definitely on the radar of a number of city council members, myself included, to see how do we do something about that to make sure that folks aren't just pushed out of their homes and communities that they've lived in for years.
Terry, are you asking about property values or property value taxes? Right, because over time, you know, property values go up, and we have somebody has an affordable house, but as they're in it, the property taxes keep going up and up and up.
Well, I was just trying to think of it at the state level, if there's some incentives and some tax credits that we could authorize in the whole income tax packages, but that sounds much more like a city-county issue. But, you know, there are many things I've learned since I've been in the legislature, and that is most important. You do a whole lot of things.
Yeah. So those are all good ideas and things that we'll be looking at.
Excuse me, I have another question for you all. I've lived in Philadelphia all my life, and I know about transit and trains and all. Will you have an express train that will go straight through, or will you have local? Because
there's so many people that live in Wake Forest, they can fill up the whole train. So I have been at a station that they just pass right by because there's no room. So when you have local, that's going to stop at every stop, or you're going to have an express train that goes straight through for the majority of the heavy load of people.
They will stop everywhere initially in the first 10
But you
years.
can't, I mean, if it's full, they're not going to stop. Well, how you going to get in? People,
Well,
because it's about,
I hope
1,000
the
people coming up
ridership
Wake
is that
Forest every
robust.
day.
Yeah.
But I don't, we don't know yet. And we would add more cars. We would add more cars.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you all again for coming out today. There are bananas and donuts, and help yourself.